parents. Have you ever walked out of a school meeting feeling that people were describing a child that you barely recognized? Welcome back to From the Teacher's Desk. I'm a special education teacher with parent and teacher-friendly strategies for neurodiverse kids to support their learning and their behavior. Today we're talking about what happens when the school calls your child defiant, when you know in your heart that there is so much more to that. And please stay until the end because we're going to be discussing a small language shift that can completely change these conversations. Let's get started. One of the hardest things for parents is to hear their child being described in a way that does not feel true. You hear words like defiant, argumentative, choosing not to learn, yet in your heart you know that that is not the whole picture, and you are probably right. Now, kids do test boundaries, they do say no, they do push back, and that's part of being a child. However, many neurodiverse kids get labeled as being defiant when the real issue is something that adults are not seeing. Maybe the instructions were too long, maybe the room was too noisy, maybe the task was too confusing, and possibly they did not process the instructions fast enough to give an answer to the teacher, and the teacher felt ignored. Now, all of these moments can look like refusal from the outside, but from the inside, they feel like confusion, panic, or shutdown. And that's a big difference. Many parents and teachers might not understand this behavior at first, and the child tends to get punished for either a gap in their learning or a nervous system response. If this is happening to your child, start looking for what might be getting in the way. And this phrase helps you ask better questions and have a better conversation at school. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," try saying, "I'm wondering whether this that you're seeing as defiance could actually be seen as overload." And ask questions. What happened right before the refusal? Was the room too noisy? Was it when activities changed? Was it during a reading, math, writing activity? This changes the whole tone of the meeting. You go from defending your child's character to investigating your child's experience. And that matters because when a child is given a label, that label tends to stick for a long time. A child who keeps hearing that they're choosing to be difficult will start believing that about themselves. But a child who is understood as going through a struggle can be learned and taught. If the problem is processing speed, then the explanations can be done in a different way. If the problem is sensory overload, for example, the room is too noisy, then the environment can be changed. If the problem is unclear instructions, then the instructions can be made visible or the teacher can show how the work is to be done. And if the problem is overload and panic, then the approach can be gentler and calmer. Kids do much better when the adults around them get curious about their experience instead of labeling and judging them. So if the school is using words about your child that don't fit with what you know and believe about them, you need to slow the conversation down and you need to ask questions. What happened before the behavior began? What supports were available? What patterns are they seeing? And you are not making excuses for your child. You are asking for a better understanding, and this is usually what leads to much better support. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Next week, we're going to be discussing why some mornings can feel like a daily emergency. Please join me then. See you next time from the Teacher's Desk.